All right. Welcome to Rich Conversations. We have another terrific episode for all of you. We are joined from Florida, Tampa Bay, Florida, by Griffin Furlong. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Now, why don't you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your story?
Okay, so my name is Griffin. Right now, I'm currently a civil engineer for a private firm. We mostly do land development, but essentially, my story, where it all kind of begins, is at the age of 6, my mother actually passed away from cancer, and it was very hard on our family, being with my dad and my brother. And it led down a series of unfortunate events where we actually became homeless. And we went homeless for around 3 to 4 years. And that's bouncing around friends' couches, hotels, motels, you name it, until, we finally hit the homeless shelter. So I spent, about 2 years in a homeless shelter. And in middle school, I made a pact to actually hit the restart button. We were actually able to get on our feet a little bit more. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but we were able to actually get in a rental home with the support of government aid and my grandma's help. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make the choice to use my mindset and to be positive around my situation, because I'm not in the shelter anymore. So I showed up every day to class curious with a positive mindset. I would sprint to the next class, try to finish as much work as possible. I would never have homework because I would do all of my work in class. And eventually it kept going from sixth grade all the way up to my senior year of high school. And I made all A's all throughout, my senior year. And during my senior year of high school, we couldn't afford the rental home anymore. It was about 4 months before graduation where we went homeless again. And literally the next week, the school announced that I was valedictorian of the class. Yeah. So a lot of mix of emotions of, I'm homeless and I'm trying to take my AP exams. I'm still actually finishing up like college essays. I'm still trying to figure out what college I even want to go to. And then I'm hit with going homeless again. And I actually had to stay with my girlfriend at the time, which was an embarrassing conversation of basically asking, for a place to stay. And fast forward to the actual graduation is I actually went viral. There was a news story that was aired by my brother's girlfriend at the time, and she had sent like a cameraman to the school to film because she thought it was touching. Here you have like a homeless kid who just got announced valedictorian, and I was super embarrassed. I didn't even want to do it, but she was like very persistent, and she sent the camera guy. We did a little bit, and my friends were all like what the heck's going on? The very next day, it went viral. I was on the phone with Good Morning America, the Today Show, and it honestly though it changed my life, because I saw the power that a story could have, and it inspires me to share that with others in hopes of motivating a student going through the same thing, or anyone. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah, that's quite a story. Now, where were you during this time? Like, what state were you in?
So I was the hardship was mainly in Louisville, Kentucky. So between the ages of when I was born up until 10 years old, I was in Louisville, Kentucky, until my family moved to Jacksonville, Florida, which is about like 12 hours. So I went to elementary school all in Kentucky, and I hit the restart button, as I call it, in Florida. So
yeah. So So did you tell your friends? Did your friends know or no?
In elementary school, I kept as much of a secret as I could, um, because it was noticeable because I rode a different bus to school. So when I would ride the homeless shelter bus, it was a small bus, it was dingy, and I was the only kid to ride the bus and get dropped off on this bus. So I think a couple of peers had an idea, but I don't think they really understood like what homelessness meant. And I think I was even trying to understand my situation too. I just kind of viewed it all as just a temporary thing of just we're not doing very well, and one day we'll all be out of here and I'll live to tell the story.
Yeah.
um but it was embarrassing, and so yeah, I held it in, and I was never really vocal with teachers either.
So why do you think you held it in, or because you said you didn't really understand it really, but could you feel a stigma already of homelessness? Like the word homelessness, does it carry the stigma that you don't want to be labeled under that?
For sure, yeah. Like the label of being poor, like for instance, I would get really embarrassed walking everywhere and riding buses, and um, because that just wasn't the normal. Everyone else was riding in their cars, or they had both parents to take them to the grocery store. I had to walk everywhere and take metro buses, and um, I couldn't invite friends over. Kids would invite me over, but I didn't necessarily want to go over because then I'd have to get dropped back off at the homeless shelter. So, and I think the embarrassment and sort of like the understanding of, my development of what homelessness even meant, um, it caused a lot of embarrassment because I think kids just didn't really understand.
Yeah.
Um, and it did happen actually. A parent dropped me back off to the homeless shelter, and a couple of kids were in the car, and they were kind of just puzzled. They were like this isn't a house, this isn't an
Yeah.
apartment. Like, who are these people outside of this shelter? um, and I think answering those questions was very difficult for me because I didn't have the answers. I don't know why. I didn't know why I was at the shelter. I didn't know why. I had an idea at the time, but once I actually got older and understood more about what was happening with, our family, that it all sort of took shape.
Yeah. Um, Now we've talked before, and that's how you kind of found me, was through my homeless story. Ours are
Yeah.
quite different, and the experiences we have, which I think hits home on the actual. What I tell people about homelessness is like redefine, like look it up in the dictionary. And homeless, it just says persons lacking permanent housing. That's all it says. It's not a physical appearance. It's not a mindset. It's like literally that's all it is. And you have your experience as a youth experiencing homelessness. There's I mean, there's so many different situations. I remember filling out, I was in a van by the Department of Human Services being taken from the police station. So I used to go to the soup kitchen on a regular basis. And, there's one of the guys there, he asked like where I stayed. And I said, oh, just kind of around in the parks and stuff. And he said, oh, you can get housing, go to a public telephone. Now at this time there were like pay phones. I don't know. This was like 10 years ago. Uh, or a police station and call 311 and someone will come help you out. So I
Mm.
was at this police station in Chicago, and I go up to the front desk and I tell them, oh, like, I'm homeless, I need a place to stay. So I call 311, And, I talk to someone, I let them know. So that I sit on a bench and I wait and I wait and I wait and I wait. I go up to the front desk. I'm like, it's been like over an hour and a half. Like, are they coming? They're like, oh yeah, sometimes it'll take them like 6 hours. And I'm just like, what? Like, cause here I thought, oh, someone needs housing. Like we got to go help them. And it was like 3 hours past. But in this van, where they took me to an overnight shelter, there were all these lists. There's this like list of reasons. And I was supposed to check off like my reason for being homeless. Mm-hmm. I checked in transit, but they were like fleeing gang violence, substance abuse, domestic abuse, loss of job, traveling. Like there were all these different, and it struck me, there's not one experience. It's like homelessness can affect anybody, and it's the result of so many different things. There's not like one direct action or cause of it. It can be anything. And so it's interesting to hear your perspective on it coming from a totally different experience, right?
Yeah, and homelessness is actually increasing because I'm writing a book, and it struck me how much homelessness has increased since even I was homeless, almost more than 100%. And it's affecting a lot of students. Homeless students are actually 87% more likely to drop out than students with houses. And not only that, but homeless youth are 4.5 times more likely to experience homelessness later in life. And that's a big problem. Depending on,
I think it's very your imagination doesn't have to work too hard to see how this can lead into damaging effects later on, right?
Yeah. And I think mindset's very important because, you can ask a lot of questions. Well, how does someone get homeless? And you hit the nail on the head. There's so many different ways. There's so many different means. And mine happened to be mainly financial and mental health. But everyone has a different story. Mm-hmm. But it affects a lot of people the same way. I think, it definitely affects the mindset because we when we hit rock bottom, as I call it, it was rock bottom. It does something to your mind. It wasn't all like rainbows and unicorns when I was in the homeless shelter. Like it took a long time of patience and stamina to build that mindset to want to do better and make the choice to do better.
What was the homeless shelter you stayed at? What was it like?
So I stayed at 2 different ones. The first one was a place where you don't want to be. There was like mold in the shower. There were rats living under us. You can hear them squeak. Cold, hard plastic mattress. You shared a room with a family. One day I had one of my peers actually come volunteer, and that was like the most embarrassing thing. The second one.
So a peer volunteered at a homeless shelter that you stayed at, and then what was that?
Okay, so
interaction like when you first talked to each other?
I tell you, my stomach like just dropped. So like it was supper. It was like dinner time, and there's like a little bell that rang, and you can hear everyone like darting to the soup kitchen. And we're waiting in line for the soup kitchen, me, my dad, and my brother. And I'm kind of like peeking in. It was actually one of the first few weeks, and I'm peeking in, and I'm like just seeing what's going on. And I saw one of the kids that was in my class, and I never felt just so embarrassed. And I was like, okay, do I come up with an excuse? Like, do I stay in this line? Do I go back to the bunk? Like, what do I do? Because I want to avoid the situation. And I chose to stay in the line. But as I got up, we looked at each other in the face, and his face just lit up. And I mean, his eyes told a thousand words.
Yeah.
He was confused, and I was kind of just looking down. There was no exchange, and he plopped his mashed potatoes on, and I went back with my family in the cafeteria, and I was just thinking of all the things, that I'm going to have to deal with tomorrow at school of is he going to tell people? Is he going to ask questions? And that's kind of what I've dealt with for many years of my childhood is all these questions that I didn't necessarily have answers to.
How old were you at the time of that exchange?
Of that experience, I was 9 years old.
Okay. Yeah. So pretty young.
Fairly young.
Yeah.
But that embarrassment was real, and it like forever stays with me.
Oh yeah. I bet you still remember it.
Mm-hmm.
What, in your opinion, how can someone who's experiencing homelessness as a youth, how can they overcome that when they do not control the external circumstances of whatever situation, parents, financial, like they're simply, a child or a teenager? What can they do, especially with their mind, to stay positive and to keep moving forward and keep getting better every single day?
I think the biggest thing is mindset. And there's a lot of little subcategories of mindset. I think mindset is the absolute number one thing that can happen. The mindset needs to be developed. I believe, in my opinion, a focused, open, aware, reflective, and positive mindset gives you a higher probability of progressing towards a realization of a worthy goal than doing the exact opposite. So if I'm not focused, if I'm not open, if I'm not aware, if I do not reflect at the end of the day, then it will destroy you more than it can provide any value. And to me, and it's easier said than done. That's why
of course.
So it's easier said than done. And that's why all I can do is share my story. Because during my childhood, again, there was a probability against me. There was a statistic, like I said, that I mentioned earlier. I was 4.5 times more likely to experience homelessness later in life. I was 87% more likely to drop out. There's all these statistics. And at the time, you don't know about any of those statistics as like an 8-year-old to 9-year-old kid. But I think what I grew was perspective. I often reflected at night, sleeping in the bunk, of embarrassment. I reflected on it, of kids seeing me hop off this, small dingy bus, or they're seeing me walking on the sidewalk with my dad carrying groceries. I reflected a lot, and I eventually grew this mindset that all of this embarrassment was short term and that I couldn't control these external factors. However, what I could control was this thing right here, of not letting this define me, but for me to define what I'm about to do. And it took a while to develop. And to me, it made logical sense to use time towards a goal. And let's say if you didn't have a goal, well, that means that you're not thinking about an end product of what you're trying to accomplish. That means you're kind of just like moving through time without any direction. I feel like with a goal, or like how I like to call it, a vision, because I'm a visual learner. If I can like visualize something and see it, something that I want, something that I crave, which to me was a vision, laying in the bunk bed, I had a vision of having a house. I had a vision of being a pro baseball player. I was in love with baseball. I had a vision of just being anywhere else besides the shelter. And I would dream, and I would tell myself that I was going to make it out of there one day. And that was the positivity. That was the seeing the glass half full mindset. So again, it all goes back to that mindset. Now let's say you're working really hard and you're trying to accomplish a goal, but no results are happening. It's happened to all of us. I'm sure it's happened to you. Well, we can actually break down in logical form what works and what doesn't work. We have the choice to give up, and we have the choice to actually form a game plan. And I get it. Like things are very difficult at times, but that doesn't make them impossible. It just makes them less attractive.
Yeah.
So our minds make the choice on if we want to view a challenge as attractive. I believe you can build a mindset to make challenges very attractive. And that is what I've done over the time. And again, it's not easy, but it's possible.
Now, is one of these steps along the way. So you have these visions of, say, owning a house, or, as far as like academic, how did the academics play in? Did you recognize, okay, if I get good grades, if I study hard, this will provide opportunities later? Is that how did that factor in?
So how I approached my future was always long-term. I could care less about the embarrassment and everything else. I mean, of course, it had some sort of factor, like a very short term, like, okay, I would be embarrassed, but then I'd wipe it away. I'd reflect at the end of the day. And my long-term plan was to always create a higher probability of creating success. And how I define success is how Earl Nightingale defined success. He was like a motivational speaker and author in like the 50s. He defined success as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or goal. Now, in middle school and high school, it seems like a big mission for a 10-year-old to have that type of thinking or mindset. But I saw school as an opportunity for a way out. All the time, I would listen to parents and other students and teachers talk about, get a degree, like it can get you a job. So I was like, oh, that sounds very, very appealing, to make it out into the world. Because I didn't want to work, I didn't want to bust my butt, like doing something I didn't love. I knew if I was to be curious enough and be educated enough to land whatever type of job or experience I wanted to create for myself, I was going to do whatever it took. Mm-hmm. So, and I was actually talking to my brother about this today. We really wanted to be professional athletes. We were I like to think that we were pretty good at baseball. I try not to say too much, but I feel like we were pretty decent.
This is probably the most normal thing you mentioned on the show so far. Every kid wants to be a professional athlete when they're young.
Exactly. But we actually, in some sort of way, like we did have that opportunity. We had a few offers to go play college ball, but me and him we were in a different situation. We didn't have a backup plan. It was almost like all or nothing. So we had to make a really hard choice. Do we go to these smaller colleges and go play baseball and try to figure out our dream, or do we go to college and aim towards something that gives us a higher probability of success or getting a job that will actually like help us get out of poverty? The probability was very low for baseball, probability was very high for academia because of making straight A's and, having those college acceptances. So it was a very tough choice for us, but it makes me wonder, and I talked to him about it, makes me wonder, like, man, if we would have just had like a very strong support system or backbone or plan B of like, having a family that had a lot of money or like a house to actually like go to, would we have been professional athletes or something? Like, I don't know, maybe in another dimension or alternate universe. But
so you end up as valedictorian. Now, was that the goal, or was that just the results of pursuing a higher goal?
That's a really good question. I think so. In middle school, I was making straight A's and I wasn't missing school at all. Perfect attendance. In 8th grade, right before high school, my brother looked at me and he was like, if you keep doing this, you can be valedictorian of your high school. You just have to keep making straight A's up until senior year. And he was like, no big deal, right? And I was like, I don't even know what a valedictorian is. I don't even know what you just said. But that sounds really cool. And I was like, well, what does a valedictorian mean? He was like, you get a speech like at the end of the year, it's the kid with the highest GPA. And I was like, okay. So he planted the seed and it was, deep in my mind, but honestly, I was just like doing what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Because that was the only way out. It was, do I go to school? Do I just party? Do I skip school? Do I make the choice to just like not apply myself? Well, where would that have taken me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where it would have taken me.
What was I going to say? So you become valedictorian. How big is your class?
It was like 750 people.
So that's pretty significant. That's not like, see, I graduated a class of like 203 and I was ranked 22nd.
Okay.
So 750, that's a lot. That's a lot. You gotta get some high grades.
Yeah, that was terrifying at the speech, because you got to think about it, like 750 people times like the 10 tickets that they all could give out. Like, it was a crowd. I was
See, I gave a speech at our graduation, and that's why I wanted to give a speech, but I can't do the valedictorian route, so I went class president route.
Yeah.
So you're giving a speech in front of all these people. What did you say in your speech?
The main idea was about never giving up and finding a purpose. I basically, told the class, I shared my story, and I basically asked them the question, are you going to live every day just kind of wandering through each day, or are you going to try to find this purpose? And even if that takes time, I feel like your whole life is about finding this purpose of what you're trying to do, your end goal. And I feel like I left off that very vague question for them to just kind of ponder and think about, and just inspire them through my story to hopefully find their purpose if they weren't thinking about it.
So did you share your story with everybody in that moment?
I did. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I wrote my speech. I wrote my speech before I was announced valedictorian. I had an idea that I was going to be like the top of the class, but I was like, man, I want to share my story. I want to get this on paper. And like, I hope this comes true. Like, I hope I get to share this. And so I wrote it. And after that, I never touched it. Even after going viral on like news stations and like traveling everywhere, like, I didn't want to change it. So looking back at my speech, I find it very funny. I open up with like a lot of jokes, but then I get really serious and everyone's like, oh crap. Like, so if I would have changed anything, I don't know. That whole delivery was interesting, but yeah.
Okay. So this
Sorry,
happens.
I kind of
And
forgot
then,
the original question. What was the
um, well, I have a new question. So,
okay.
so you become valedictorian. Now you're probably aiming to go to college. Which colleges are you looking at? And then what are you planning to pursue? What has sparked your interest in pursuing?
So I was looking into it was a really tough choice because like I told you, I was looking into baseball. So it's like I had these three smaller schools. One was like Sewanee, like a little school in Tennessee, Center College in Kentucky, again, just small, and then like another small school in Minnesota, which is like very far from Florida. That wasn't really a tough decision. But but then on the academic side, I was looking at Vanderbilt. I was looking at Duke. I was looking at Georgia Tech. I applied to Dartmouth. I didn't get into Dartmouth. Um, and then a couple Florida schools. I was really into UCF, which is Central Florida, and then finally FSU. I mean, I had applied to over like 20, 30 different colleges, but those were my set ones.
Okay.
And I finally chose Florida State because my brother went there and I toured there and I fell in love. I fell in love with the campus. I fell in love with the energy. And people laugh at me. They're like, man, you went to the party school with the football team. But it was like, I don't regret a single thing about that school. It was like, it was the best time I ever had. And I made many connections that'll last a lifetime. Um, so yeah. So my major though, so you asked like what I was trying to pursue. I really loved math all throughout middle school and high school. And I didn't know much about other professions, to be honest with you. I was just a kid who was just just trying to get educated, just trying to learn as much as I could. I didn't really know about like the real world outside. I
Yeah.
didn't really know what the different type of engineers are, the different type of doctors or anything else that you can be. But it was my senior year of high school. My calculus teacher pulled me to the side after class and she was like, hey, like you're like really good at this. Have you thought about your major yet? Like, what do you want to be? She was curious. And I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea, but I know I love math. And she was like, you should be an engineer. And I was like, okay. I have no idea what that even means. But I'll check it out. So she kind of planted the seed. And I actually started Florida State as a math major. But that seed, I had to, she mentioned engineer. And I think it was like the third week. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be an engineer. So I chose mechanical engineering, not knowing what the heck that even meant. Um, but I eventually, after going through some of the classes and the prerequisites, it's all the same. A mechanical engineer, civil, electrical, you're all taking calculus, you're taking physics, you're taking chemistry. So I had time to figure out like what I wanted. So I had a realization as I was kind of diving in and learning more about each industry. I was like, man, civil engineering is very practical. There's so
That
many.
sounds like someone who likes math. Hey, that sounds pretty practical.
Yeah, I like logic.
What's the
So
higher probability that
I'm a numbers guy. I'm like a logic guy. I follow logic typically. So yeah, I mean, I could have been so in civil engineering. I know you had a geotechnical engineer on one of your. I listened to that one.
Yeah, we've had a few number of engineers. We had a mechanical engineer on, but he was talking about his hobby. He's got telescopes that he like explores
Okay.
space with.
Oh, that's awesome. I wish I had
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah, we had a geotechnical civil engineer from Egypt.
Yeah, I listened to that one. That one was really unique. But yeah, so freshman year I had to explore like what I wanted to be, but I saw that civil engineering, you can be a geotechnical, you can be a transportation engineer, you can be a land development, water resources. There's so many different types of civil engineers. And I was like, well, I'm going to take the one that has the higher probability of like finding a little niche, and I I finally chose civil engineering. And at the end of the day, whatever engineering you chose, it was all about solving some sort of problem. And I don't really have a unique story like some people where they're like, yeah, when I was a kid, I used to like rebuild things. I would like, break it apart, put it back together. Like
Yeah.
I really loved Legos. All I got for Christmas was Legos. Honestly, I fell in love with the language of math. And once I got to college, I started viewing the world in a different way. Everything was a number. And it was opening my mind up to the possibilities. Like after leaving physics class, I was just like mind blown. The building you and I are in, engineers have studied every.
I got just right here, just physics books.
See, okay, quantum theory. That's like stuff you can't really see, but like yeah, like the building that we're in, like the soil was studied, like the foundation underneath, the structure, to the water and sewer pipes that are coming to your house or wherever you are at right now, travel to you so you can do your business. The lift station across the neighborhood that's collecting your business, getting sent through a centrifugal pump that was designed by electrical or mechanical engineer. I mean, everywhere around us is a mathematical equation, and there's just a full language around us. And it's just like, that's kind of what I fell in love with. And that's kind of how I was drawn to engineering.
So it's like there's all these puzzles to be solved, and you find joy and pleasure in solving all these puzzles.
Yes. Yeah. Every day is a puzzle. Like right now, so I'm a land development engineer, which like, what the heck does that mean? I'm basically preparing the land around us to build something on. And what I'm also doing is doing all the infrastructure underneath. So like all of your water, your sewer, your reclaim, your irrigation, your stormwater management, all the ponds that you see around, and like basically all the infrastructure, all the grading, like how a site like looks and inundates and everything. It's a puzzle. And we're using like programs using all of that math language to solve the problem. So like you can do your business so that people's houses don't flood, so that large 700-acre sites don't flood. So it's a really fun game.
The unsung heroes of it all.
Yeah. We don't get enough credit, man. We make all this stuff happen.
Because if you do your job right, then no one talks about you, or we don't hear about you. You do it wrong, we hear about you.
Especially structural, which is just like, man, that's a whole nother ball game. Like I'm gonna say this, you can be a mass murderer as a structural engineer. Have that pressure on you of holding an entire bridge full of people. I'm not a structural. I thought about it.
That's a lot. So that's a lot of stress. You got to get it right.
Yeah, that's a huge ton. You can flood people's houses a little bit. I'm just kidding. They have insurance though, so.
So do you see yourself long term in civil engineering, or?
I would say so. It's a great profession, and there's a $1 trillion infrastructure bill coming. So I mean, for any people in college right now, I'd say definitely get into civil engineering. But yeah, I see myself being an engineer, being a civil engineer for a while. But I also, I really enjoy writing. I really enjoy public speaking. I like sharing my story. So how my long-term plan is laid out is, no matter what I do, I'm just trying to grow. And, wherever my life takes me, that's what I'm going to put 100% effort in at all times. So I'm excited for my civil engineering profession, but I'm also excited for all the opportunities, around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, shifting gears a little bit, we mentioned mindset a lot. How can someone cultivate the mindset that will prepare them for success, or wire themselves for success?
So I think it's all about couple things that I do, at least, because I mean, I can only really share like from experience. What's at least have helped me going from homeless, poverty-stricken student to, straight A's, magna cum laude in college, and having a profession where I never have to worry about like money or where I'm going to sleep at night again. Like that's a tough journey. So as far as my perspective on building a mindset is growing your perspective. And I'll start there, because the more that we can grow our perspectives as humans, the more that we can start understanding the world around us and why people operate. Once you start actually just reflecting more and start growing in terms of, I guess, not being so narrow-minded, once we start like building a more open mind, we can actually, we can learn a lot. And I think it starts there. And where it kind of transitions to is really building a mindset of being reflective. So at the end of the day, I always write in my journal over here, and I reflect on maybe, things that worked, things that didn't work. But then I also just kind of give insight to how my life is. How am I feeling? Mm-hmm. How aware am I of my day? Did I have a good day? Did I have a bad day? If it was a bad day, that's okay. It's okay. We can have bad days. But what am I going to do the next day? So after I'm done with my journal, I go to a game plan, which I have sitting over here. I write out a game plan of how I can be better the next day, or maybe like what I'm trying to do the next day. Now, that's what I do. That might be crazy for other people. Like that seems like a lot of work, but it's all about the mindset. I'm willing to put in that time and effort because I see the value that it creates. So it goes back again, building that mindset. If you want to start creating more opportunities for growth, I think there's a lot of value in these types of things to start reflecting and to start developing some sort of game plan. Because like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a vision, you don't necessarily have a direction. So how are you supposed to know what to do all in between now and your goal? How do you know? Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of how like someone can begin to grow that mindset. I know that's a lot. I can keep going on, but I think like if I were to say the main bullet points: growing perspective, being more reflective, and game planning, and being more aware about what you're doing throughout the day. Like,
so how does one, when you say the word perspective, right? It's not something that can just be grabbed. Like, oh, like reflection. Okay, I get that. If I'm someone who's approaching, I want to get better. What do I do? Well, reflect. Okay, so think about my life. I can do that. What was it? What was the other one you said? Game plan or
yeah, game plan.
Okay, so that seems a little bit more solid. Perspective isn't something that I can necessarily grab. And
yes.
How does one, when they're especially starting off, how do they, I think what you were kind of communicating is like the grander perspective you have, the bigger and wider it becomes, the more problems and puzzles you're able to solve, because you can use creativity to pull from, oh, I learned about that, I can put it over here. Whereas like if it's smaller, you're limited in your options of solving puzzles, right?
Yeah. So I think like one thing that is definitely beneficial, in order to actually sort of grow the perspective, we have to be able to share stories, and that can be through anything. So like reading books. Reading books is a story. Reading books, like right now I'm reading Lewis and Clark, like journals. I'm reading their journals because I'm curious as to their perspective. I've learned so much from Lewis and Clark because I feel forever grateful for everything around me, because what they had to go through was miserable. I learned a perspective of maybe I should be grateful for all the things around me. I didn't have diseases. I didn't almost like die from whitewater rafting across the river that they were going through. You start building this perspective and you start becoming either more grateful or you learn something. And I think I've shared this story. I kind of want to keep it short, but when I was in college, I met this homeless man, and we both had different perspectives of each other because it was late at night. He had approached me, and it was just the situation. It was I was startled because I was alone and it was dark. And I'm going to say this, he happened to be a homeless Black man that was living on the street. I happened to be what appeared to be a preppy white boy with like a nice watch and like a Ralph Lauren polo and stuff.
Yeah.
He shared our perspective. All he wanted was help. And I turned away and I didn't want to help him. But I made the choice to help him. I walked away, but I came back. I went to the store. I went to the little mart. I grabbed him some food and I sat down and I talked with him. And he was like, man, like, thank you. Like, no one ever even looks at me in the eyes. And, you know, people like you, like, you know, not to bash you, but people like you, you know, with dad's money and just, you know, you have everything in the world, you know, I'm just invisible. And I'm like, oh, so here, you know, we're sharing our perspectives. He didn't know that I got this Fossil watch for like a crazy deal, basically almost like free. I got the Ralph Lauren polo at Plato's Closet. I was homeless years prior. I have no dad's money. My dad doesn't have any retirement. He's sharing this perspective of me, of what he thinks, just based on how I'm looking. But until we actually sat down and had the conversation of sharing our perspective, we had no idea. And we talked, and we actually had more in common than we thought. We were both from Kentucky. We both had drive. He was trying to get back to Kentucky to get to his family. He just happened to have a series of unfortunate events happen just like me, but we never would have known if we never sat down and actually talked to each other. So when I'm sharing this, grow your perspective, it's all about sharing stories and having an open mind and growing as individuals, of trying to learn something, being curious about people, being curious about how the world actually works. Because when you narrow your mindset, you're narrowing all of your possibilities. I learned so much from that experience, and it actually inspired me to write. If I would have never had that experience, I would have never written about it, and I maybe wouldn't have been inspired. Yeah. So growing your perspective can change your life and your mindset.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Great story too. Stories, such a huge part of the human experience. Mm-hmm. Shifting gears a little bit again, do you have like three people or things or books that have influenced your outlook on life?
So let's see. I want to start, my family listens to this, which they probably will. They'll find this funny. I really like, as far as like financial and just thinking about like value and things, I think about The Millionaire Next Door. That's changed my whole perspective on money and value, and what's really important. When I was a kid, I didn't grow up with very many things. So early on, I learned a lot about like what things are actually worth. And we basically, as humans, define value to certain things. But once I got older and read this book, I was like, man, I do not need for myself a fancy car or to spend large amounts of money on like nice things, clothes, anything. And that's changed my whole perspective on the way that I live life. So I would definitely recommend that book.
So this book is by who? And
let me actually get it. Let's see. If you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got like a big stack of books over here. Let's see what I got. Oh, it's heavy. Okay. I should know authors. I need to do a better job at memorizing these things. So The Millionaire Next Door, Thomas J. Stanley, PhD. Okay. William D. Danko, PhD. The Surprising Secrets of America's Wealthy. Millionaires aren't who you think. They really aren't. They're hardworking people who save a lot of money and live below their means. I'm like, wow, that is incredible. you can really change your life, because it's all about security. People think retirement is just like you just like stop working. No, retirement is a plan so you can have enough money to be able to do whatever the heck you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what retirement is. I never knew that as a kid. I just thought it meant you quit working.
Yeah, you go sit on a beach or a cabin somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Until you die.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. But no, like things actually cost money. So
yeah. Okay. So two other influences.
I'm looking at these other books. I'm trying to think of people. I mean, I'll say just a very general group of people are teachers. I'm a teacher at heart, and having a really good teacher or mentor, I guess I could say, teacher, mentor, interchangeable, have changed my life. So I had a few teachers in high school, like the calculus teacher. I mean, she inspired me to be an engineer, and all she did was pull me over to the class, and she said, "Hey, like you're good at this." And that's all I needed to be like, wow, like that positive, affirmation of like, dang,
Yeah.
okay, I am good at something. And in my college, professors challenged me. So really, I just want to give a big shout out to the teachers and the professors that have shaped my mind and challenged me to think outside the box. I'm looking over here at my books. I want to give a special shout out to my brother. I mean, he is my biggest mentor. So him. But if I have to give one more book, I mean, you can't go wrong with How to Win Friends and Influence People. You can't. It's a classic by Dale Carnegie. If you literally like follow those guidelines, I mean, you will see a significant impact in your day. Like just being kind, like actually does something. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So, those are good ones. Do you draw any inspiration from musical artists? Music?
All the time. I am a human iPod. I won in middle
People
school.
don't know what that is anymore. iPod.
Yeah,
that's you got to use a different term.
Yeah, I am a music player. I am a Spotify. I am a
yeah. There you go.
I'm a Spotify playlist. I love all different types of music. Because I think music is a feeling. I think people listen to music for how exactly they want to feel at the time, right? Like when I'm feeling like, if I'm about to have a party, I'm not about to put on like sad music for everyone to cry to. I'm about to like, turn up a little bit with someone. Well, I like rap to kind of turn up, but sometimes country does it for some people. But you asked, so music. Since growing up, I've been a huge hip hop and rap fan.
Okay.
I'm hip hop and rap to the absolute core. Second to that is probably like classic rock. But I think 3 artists that have inspired me. So I'm going to go and say this. This is this bold statement. I would say Logic. So Logic, the rapper, he inspired me to write. So I listened to his albums Under Pressure and Incredible True Story on the way to college. And right when I got to college, it inspired me so much that I began writing lyrics. And I loved his flow. I loved his storytelling, his concept. So I would say Logic's up there. I would say Kendrick Lamar inspired me to think deep and build sort of like my own perspective of my writing and to do a better job at writing, because Kendrick Lamar is just absolutely a mastermind at like different rhyme schemes, different like feelings, cadences, expressing major themes in his work. Like Good Kid, Mad City is just like unreal. To Pimp a Butterfly, this is probably like a To Pimp a Butterfly. I don't know if many people would agree with this. I mean, it won a Grammy, but To Pimp a Butterfly is just an absolute masterpiece of jazz, funk, soul, incredible rhyme scheme, storytelling. I throw that on a lot, actually. I've been listening to a lot of Kendrick Lamar. And then honestly, lastly, I mean, I'm just gonna keep it rap. I really love J. Cole. He's just more fun to me. I like his rhyme schemes too. He's more of like my fun rapper. I throw him on if I'm working out. I mean, I can throw on any album. Um, but I will tell you though, even though those are my favorites, like actually in rotation right now is honestly none of them. Uh,
Okay.
Kendrick a little bit, but I've been into a little bit like alternative, I guess, or R&B. So I've been throwing on Tame Impala.
Dude, Tame Impala's my guy. Yeah.
That is like unreal. It's the Slow Rush album and Currents.
Yeah.
Half the time, I don't know what is being said, but it's a feeling. It's like an energy.
Yeah.
Like to me, that's like a productive, like I throw that on if I'm trying to get productive or I guess feel some type of way. Um, Frank Ocean's good too.
Okay.
R&B. I think he's actually one of the top R&B artists of our time. I just don't think he gets like a lot of credit. I don't know if
Hmm.
he's won Grammys, but that's kind of like what I've been into recently.
Yeah, that's a good, what do you call that? Good stable of artists for sure. Uh okay. Couple last questions here.
Okay.
This was one of my favorite questions. What are you curious about recently?
It's funny. It's funny you asked that because I'm curious throughout the day and I'll actually like bust out like a journal or like I go into my phone and I write stuff down.
Mhm.
So I will share with you like what I've written down this week. And look, it's just random thoughts. So this week I thought of sort of how humans are cyborgs and how we're getting closer and closer to being an outright robotic machine. I don't know how to get anywhere without Google Maps. Snapchat stores my memories and Facebook. My Apple Watch tells me when to breathe, when to drink water. Who needs to memorize information? I have Siri, Alexa, Google. We communicate through text, emojis, and I've been curious as to like when are we just going to be implemented into just a machine? And what I started thinking even more deeply about too was I don't want to sit around a machine because who wants to know it all? If people can just Google every answer, what's the fun? What's the fun in like not knowing an answer and like investigating a problem? I don't want to be at a party and have like this robot like tell me everything. Like, no, I want to investigate with the team.
I don't think we'll run out of problems. I think I think we'll continue to find problems.
Do you know what I mean though? Like, okay, you know how when we don't know something, we're like, oh, just Google it. Well, I
Yeah.
actually like hate that. I actually like trying to like think about it.
I'm trying to find this book. Have you read Homo Deus by Yuval Harari?
I have not. Oh my days.
Oh, here it is.
I'm gonna have to write that down.
Yeah. I don't have the book cover on it, but I definitely recommend this. This is the book I read it in probably like 2018, 2019 that really spurred me in the direction of technology and science.
Okay.
It really captivated me. So he wrote Sapiens, which is
Yeah,
somewhere over there. So Sapiens is like a history of the human species, and this is about the future of the human species. So it's
nice. Okay.
very interesting. Yeah,
I'm
you'll
gonna have to
enjoy
read
it a
that
lot.
one. Is it a couple of the same concepts that I'm talking about? Like basically how we're gonna be a little bit more just cyborgs or machines or no? I mean, we kind of are machines, but
Yes and no. Mainly yes, but everything. So at the top of the human agenda, it used to be like, how do we solve? How do we solve? If we're talking about problems that the human species has, war, disease, and famine. That until the 21st century, that's what we were focused on. But now, for the most part, granted, we have stuff going on in Europe right now, but like for the most part, the whole human species has solved that. So what do we put at the top of the human agenda now? People want to live longer, healthier, and happier. So we're going to see revolutions, and the information revolution has allowed this to become possible. But now, like the biotech revolution is happening. We have so many different technologies. Our technologies and knowledge are getting put into ourselves, biology. How do we improve these faulty things? Because we're, so a lot of it is driven with that. And now humans are hackable, as far as like, we know by studying the brain, we know that when you go on this thing right here, we are trying to get, certain responses from you. And we're using game theory to have your attention and then commoditize your attention and sell it to it's pretty wild. So you have to, like, what he describes is the two most important skills of the 21st century are cognitive and communication, because technology is compounding at a rate that humans can't keep up with. And you might be told this information or this knowledge, but a year from now, it could be vastly improved or different. So you always have to prepare your mind to be adjusting this, like, mental agility, and be able to, like, critically think about the world, so you can always adapt and adjust with the changing time, and also understand what's happening and communicate to others. Those things, cognitive ability and communication, are two skills that will not become outdated or antiquated in the 21st century, whereas like many others could be,
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's interesting that you mentioned, like, okay, now we aim to live like a longer life and more happiness. As you're sitting here saying that, I'm thinking, well, what about, like, I think it would be a really neat goal to make sure that, like, an asteroid doesn't, like, just destroy the Earth, to make sure that we can live longer. Maybe we should, like, protect this, like, only thing that we have, because we haven't made it to Mars yet. But I'm sitting here thinking, I feel like that should be a goal, which leads me to my next curiosity thing that I was thinking about this week: satellites. So, like, I don't know enough about satellites. I'm sure, like, there's some expert that can have a say in this, but, like, how many satellites will it take to just, like, block the Earth? Who's regulating that? And what's the probability of, like, satellites colliding and, like, coming back down to Earth and just, like, killing people? Like, how many satellites does it take to where we can't leave Earth anymore because we're just going to, like, crash through them? Is anyone keeping tabs of how all these, like, satellites are, like, orbiting? Maybe
I sure hope that everybody's keeping track of the satellites we're putting up.
I would sure hope too, but I was just curious, because I was like, well, how many would it take to cover the entire Earth? Are we close to that number? Probably not, because we can still see the sun and space and stuff. But I'm just wondering, with all the new advancements in SpaceX, sending, like, thousands of satellites in our orbit, like, I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking about.
Yeah, interesting.
Will that hold us back from actually leaving Earth? Will that actually, like, block radiation or maybe, like, sunlight? I don't know. Is anyone studying this enough? Probably. But
maybe we'll find out.
I need to do some digging.
Sometime. Some research.
Just like, those are just random thoughts.
Curiosities. Okay, so last question. What's something that excites you for the next 2 years?
My immediate answer, what I'm really excited for, is to actually go speak at school. So I'm going to speak in Pensacola, to a school that has high poverty, and there are a lot of homeless kids at the school. And I'm really excited about that opportunity, because it's the first time that I've actually gone back in that type of setting with a different perspective. And I hope to inspire the students there, and I hope to inspire teachers. And I'm excited about the opportunities that come after that too, of finally sharing my book. I hope to publish my book this year, which I'm like just super excited about. It's been a long journey. It's such a short book, but it's like, I'm a perfectionist and no one understands how hard it is to like write a book. I'm sure you do. Cause what, you've written 2 now? 3?
3, yeah.
3? It's tough. And I'm sure like you learn a lot from the first one. This is my first, but man, it's just like, you question yourself, you get imposter syndrome. You start thinking like, does anyone actually like care about this? Like, are people actually like going to read this or buy it or do anything with it? So I've had a lot of that, but I'm finally, I'm excited. I'm excited about sharing it, and it will be this year. So I'm also excited for just things that I love. So like now I'm in a time where I can actually enjoy myself. I'm stable. I'm financially stable. I love golf. I want to be a better golfer. I love my friends, and I love exploring new places. So I hope this year, I can actually like travel a little bit more and kind of just like make some memories with friends. And then lastly, just my job. We have a lot of exciting projects coming. The infrastructure bill is going to be kicking in. So I'm telling you, civil engineering is going to be booming, and it's going to be exciting times. I'm excited for like the different types of like smart infrastructure we're going to be utilizing. I'm excited. I'm excited for like how fast it's all going to happen. And I hope that it won't happen too fast because I want to appreciate all of it.
Wow. Well, very cool. This has been a great conversation, a rich conversation. Yeah. Thanks for stopping by, Griffin.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. I'm just to be able to share my story and be here. I'm grateful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.